Thank you very much, Chief Constable. Yeah, the Designing Out Crime Officers really are a fantastic resource within policing. I'm going to move on to now something that I know is top of everybody's minds and is incredibly topical at the moment as well, which is financing and the Surrey Police budget. Now, the Police and Crime Panel will this week be meeting along with me and my team to discuss the precept rise. As many of you will know, a survey went out before Christmas asking residents right across Surrey how much they would be prepared to pay for policing across the county. Chief Constable, I wonder if you could explain to us some of the pressures that are currently on Surrey policing in terms of the budget and what's being done about it, and what you would like to see and what you would like the panel to be considering this Friday when they meet.
Yeah, of course, Commissioner, thank you. And maybe bringing Pete in as the Finance Director to talk of some of the detail in a moment. But if I just give some headlines. So probably the first thing to say is that the last 10 years have seen significant financial pressure on policing, and I recognise that's a tough message because throughout those 10 years, local residents in Surrey are consistently being paying more and more of their council tax on policing contributions. But we've taken out £70 million of savings from Surrey Police over the course of the last 10 years. Why is that? Well, the amount of grant that we get from central government is effectively at the same level now, in fact a little bit less than it was 10 years ago. So the amount of funding we get from central government is flat or decreasing, and of course inflation over 10 years is quite significant, and police inflation is different to general inflation. What do I mean by that? The amount that we need to put into digital investment is significant compared to the sort of average householder. The digital forensics works that we've been talking about, that explosion of storage of CCTV, all of that costs an awful lot of money, and there's no sign anytime soon of that getting any cheaper. So inflation's a significant pressure on us. We do realise that all of that amounts to us coming to Surrey communities and saying that if you want to maintain Surrey as good quality policing, keeping us there as the sort of fourth or fifth safest county to live and work and visit in England and Wales, then it does need that continued investment. But I accept that in practical terms, that means that Surrey residents are almost paying for their policing twice in comparison to other county areas. But we are really grateful that people make that choice. And in the recent survey, Commissioner, that you did come out in favour of wanting to have a well-funded police service. What that money will go towards is helping us finish off the commitments for all of those new teams that we talked about. So this morning we've talked about rural crime and Fatal 5 team on the roads, but there are teams going into violence against women and girls that I know we're going to come on to talk about later on the agenda, and to fill in all of those detective vacancies that we so desperately need in order to solve more crime for people as well. And we, at the same time as want to invest in those areas, we want to maintain our really high quality local policing that we do in Surrey, those neighbourhood officers, those police community support officers across the county that we know our communities really value and are central to keeping crime levels low. The other thing that I'll probably just mention, and of course I know when households and businesses are finding it really tight, this is a sensitive topic, but pay for colleagues in policing has been a real pressure as well. And that's particularly important to us in Surrey because we're recruiting heavily, yes, and we're not seeing any shortage of recruits, but we do need to retain them when we've recruited them. And we know that Surrey is a very difficult area to live in. Colleagues in police officers are effectively at the same level of pay now that they were 10 years ago. And it would take many, many years for their pay to recover to an equivalent point to match inflation. So we don't, as a Chief Constable, I don't decide locally on pay. It's done through a national pay review body. But we are making a case this year that our colleagues deserve a pay rise just to help them keep pace with that cost of living in what is a very expensive county. So we are going to need to spend some more money on pay and reward to keep people. Appreciate that's a difficult message because I know everybody's struggling, but if we don't take those measures, and of course they're very expensive steps to take, then we do just run the risk of having a revolving door of recruitment, and that's really expensive too, and it doesn't help us build up the skills we need in order to be much better investigating those crimes that we were talking about earlier. So that's a bit of context, Commissioner. I don't know whether you want to come back with any questions or move to Pete on some of the detail of the budget plans.
Yeah, I think that is helpful. So in that sense, obviously I will go into the Police and Crime panel on Friday. What are you saying that you need me to be recommending to the Police and Crime panel?
We need, when the spending review took place over the summer months of last year, and in policing we made a really strong case for a 3-year settlement for policing, which we've got. And it's a reasonable settlement. It doesn't by all means cover all of the pressures. I mean, we've all seen inflation running at a much higher level than we expected it to be. Although it was a good settlement, in the government announcements, the figures that they said were coming into policing were reliant on the full use of local police flexibility, so a £10 increase. Even with a £10 increase, we've still got something in the region of £6 million of efficiencies to take out. So, we're adding to that 70 million of efficiencies that I've already talked about. So even with a maximum increase, we will still be making the money work really hard. If we weren't to get that maximum increase, then some of those investments that we've talked about, we would have to reconsider, or we would need to look to where we make cuts elsewhere. And of course, we really don't want to cut back on local policing services for people. So absolutely, the force is advocating to you, Commissioner, and I know that your position to the panel is, in order to keep this county as safe as it possibly can and to be feeling safe as well, we need that full flexibility.
And finally, on the issue of finances, can you just sort of spell out for us and for the public exactly what, for example, a £5 increase as opposed to the £10 would look like for Surrey Police and therefore for our residents?
Yeah, well, bearing in mind that more than 50% of our budget now comes from local taxation as opposed to central government grant, we're not well insulated from a change of that nature. So if, unlike some other county areas where their government grant is more than 80% of their overall budget, maybe that difference in precept, wouldn't be as significant for them. But for Surrey, it is really significant. I clearly don't want to unsettle communities, but you would expect us in the force to look at scenarios where we don't get that full £10 and look at what that would mean to service provision, and it would mean some really difficult cuts in the service that we're able to make. And we've already talked about this morning. We really want to keep those one-on-one answering times within acceptable levels. We want to keep those community policing services. We want to do the specialist services on the roads, and I'd say about to come under violence against women and girls, and we really don't want to have to cut into some of that activity. People listening might say, well, what about your back office services? Can't you make savings in those? They've been really, in that 10 years of £70 million worth of savings, they have been cut and cut and cut. Now, there is some opportunity for further transformation, but that needs investment in order to do it. We're beyond the stage now where there are easy savings to take, and if you want to move to the next level of transformation, then that requires investment to be able to do that. And we have got some exciting plans coming up over the next 10 years where we want to sort of transform the service. We talked about all the the digital revolution stuff, for example, and we already collaborate on our HR, finance, IT with colleagues in Sussex Police. We already have some collaborators across the region as well. All of our specialist crime services and all of our operational services are all collaborated with Sussex as well. All of those things have driven out significant amount of resilience and savings over the last 10 years. So there's no easy places we can go if we only had £5 and not £10.
That's great, thank you, and very clear, Chief Constable.